Hey everybody, Jamieleigh here. I thought I would film a video without a bird necessarily in it because I can't usually get through a video with how distracting my birds are for me. So anyways, I gathered your most commonly asked questions about cockatoos. Now I know that people from Australia get kind of annoyed with us Americans when we call galahs cockatoos. However, here in the US at least, we refer to them as rose-breasted cockatoos. So I'm going to include galahs in this video. So it started out with what is my favorite type of cockatoo. If we're including the galah, they are definitely my favorite type of cockatoo. The reason why is raising a galah is probably the best time of my life. Every time I tell Dave, like, oh, you know, if anything ever happens to our galahs, I don't think I'd ever get another one. He's always like, yeah, you would. And we have a free flight student right now with a galah named Boomerang, and every time he makes his baby noise or acts like makes sounds like he's dying on a toy when he's actually upside down celebrating, just being crazy and hilarious and adorable and very galah-like, it brings memories back of raising Bondi and Bandit, and I really do miss that. I would love to be hired to raise a baby galah because they are probably the most fun. And then for free flight, they made me lose my stomach the most because there's not really a pattern to their flight. They tend to zigzag and do these celebratory flights that are just, they look very chaotic. I remember after we named Bandit, like months later, I was like, you know, we should have named him Chaos because that's what he brings to mind when we were teaching him flight training. It was just chaotic to watch. And somehow it's not to them, but it's really hilarious and it's a lot of fun, and there's so much personality jam-packed, I think, in all cockatoos, but for me, I especially see it in galahs. I think the goofy side of galahs is what really gets me. I love that. And I remember somebody telling me that in Australia, it's like an insult to call somebody a galah, like you call them a silly galah, and it basically means like you're an idiot. And I just cannot wait to see them in the wild, hanging upside down, taking baths, being their crazy selves, because they're definitely my favorite. Now, my least favorite is probably the umbrella cockatoo, and that's just because I find them hardest to read in body language. I would say I also hear the most horror stories, so it's probably just from not having enough positive experiences with umbrellas, but they're also the type of species that I see among cockatoos that are more, I would say I see the most problems with. They're the ones that I see in bad situations the most, and so they just kind of resonate with me, as I always question whether or not they should even be pets when it comes to umbrella cockatoos during certain situations. That being said, there is an amazing lady who free flies an umbrella cockatoo named Ann Cooper. She's over on the group Parrot Free Flight International on Facebook, and she makes me completely think the opposite about umbrella cockatoos. So she's doing amazing things. And I do see YouTube channels where they have a rescue umbrella cockatoo or just any sort of cockatoo, and you can tell that those people were just made for that bird, and that happened, like the universe made that happen for a reason. And so, yeah, I think there's certain situations that make you sad and think, wow, these birds shouldn't be in captivity. And then there's other situations that are just like, wow, that looks meant to be. I'm so happy for that owner and that bird. So that's my personal. I would love to know what your guys' favorite species of cockatoo and least favorite is. That would really interest me. I know a lot of people are kind of on the fence about the black palm cockatoo. Some people think they're majestic and beautiful, and other people think they're ugly. So I would love to know where you guys stand on that. So leave it in a comment. I'll be reading them. Another question I got was about nutrition and health issues that cockatoos deal with. Now, cockatoos, because they tend to be less food motivated, they're more motivated by praise or attention. Excuse me. Or just different things. They can be rewarded by people. I knew one that was rewarded by strangers, so he would be on his best behavior for strangers, but people that he knew, he would test out a little bit more. So cockatoos can be harder to kind of figure out, but once you do figure them out, then you can go just miles and miles with them as far as progress and figuring your bird out and what makes him tick and what makes him not tick. So the health issues that can be done with cockatoos, because they are so social and they're adorable, is that a lot of times people cave to giving them human foods more often than they should. And this leads to health issues because a cockatoo is a type of bird who, among other types of species of bird, will stick their beaks up at maybe their own type of food that they should be eating and refuse to eat it, even to the point of starvation. There's some birds that will starve themselves and refuse to eat something. And that's what I find really scary with cockatoos, because they can often suffer from obesity and fatty liver disease. And this usually happens from improper diet and improper exercise. So a lot of the times, I talked about in my other video with Bandit, cockatoos can be notorious for being known to dive bomb people. People will clip the bird's wings so that it can't fly and attack people, but what that leads to is a lack of exercise. And so maybe the bird's locked up in the cage from that point on. Maybe it's not, but it's not really, it's kind of becoming a couch potato bird and just not getting a lot of movement in its daily routine. So galahs and just all types of cockatoos can be prone to fatty liver and obesity, so it's something that you really need to be aware of with those species, among other types of birds as well. How and why did I get my galahs? So again, when I was first getting into birds, which means when I was first dating Dave, I was very intimidated by birds because I didn't understand their body language. So I had no idea what happy versus angry looked like, because to me, as a non-bird person at the time, in a cockatoo, it looked the same. You know, they would poof up and get what I thought was excited, whether they were angry or actually like happy excited. And so I had a really hard time telling the difference, and Dave thought if I were to raise a galah, I would be able to get accustomed to bird body language in a safe environment. So that's what we did. He got Bondi, and we raised Bondi together, and I got to understand her body language from a non-intimidating standpoint. So non-intimidating from the standpoint of, you know, for a fact that a baby animal doesn't have it out for you and isn't trying to hurt you. So I could learn everything more easily and more at I guess I was more relaxed working with that bird. So that's why and how we got Bondi. And then a few years later, when we got into free flight, our first free flighted bird was CRESSI, our African gray. And Dave just wasn't ready to allow Bondi the same freedom of free flight yet. We didn't raise her with even understanding that outdoor free flight existed. And you guys will find, and I'm sure my students will probably chime in on this, when you get a bird with the intent of outdoor free flight, it's different than learning that outdoor free flight is a thing and training the bird that you've had for a while to do it. It's just kind of two different mentalities, and so he really wasn't ready to do it with Bondi, and he wanted to see how a galah goes through the process. So he was like, hey, if we get another galah and we train it for outdoor free flight, then maybe I'd feel more comfortable, and Bondi and that bird could fly together, and we'll understand, and we'll know like for sure that we did everything right, because it turned out we accidentally did everything right to raise Bondi for outdoor free flight. So that's when we got Bandit. We learned how to free flight train a galah, which was the most fun thing ever. They are crazy. For those of you that have not seen galahs in free flight, it's hilarious, because when we first let our birds out to fly, it's fairly predictable about like the flight pattern that they'll take. But with the galah, it's not predictable at all. It's just zigzags and craziness in the sky, which makes it really hard to get video footage or good photos, but also just makes you laugh and have a great time. So they're literally one of my favorites for free flight. A great question I have here is, how often should they bathe? Ideally, with every species of parrot, they should be bathing every single day. If you can get them too. I have birds that will bathe every day. COMET, TUSA, my Camelot macaws, they will bathe every day without fail. But CRESSI and then BANDIT are more likely to actually fly away from the shower when they don't want to. I also find that birds are more likely to bathe if the environment is set up for it. So if it's a hotter day, they're more likely. If it's sunny outside and they're looking for kind of that relief, they're more likely. But if it's windy and a bit gloomy outside, they're not really looking to do it. I noticed that they're a lot more resistant in the winter months. If it's been a few days since they've had a bath, they're more likely to take a bath. And some birds prefer different temperatures of water. So CRESSI likes cold water, whereas BONDI likes warm water. And I usually use warm water for all my birds. But it just kind of depends. If they're outdoors in aviaries, then it's cold water because it's coming from the misting of a hose. So yeah, ideally you would be bathing your cockatoo every day, because cockatoos especially have a lot of dust. Out of all of our birds, Dave is most allergic to the cockatoos. So for those of you with allergies, it's something to be very aware of. You can use air filters and things like that, and that's why I'm a huge advocate of outdoor aviaries, is it really keeps it down, obviously, because they're outside. But when you have a bird indoors and you see all that white and all those feathers that come out all the time, just from natural molting and everything, and what happens when they preen and they shake and you just see the dust, it can be really, really intense, and it's not good for anybody to be breathing it in. So you really want to make sure that your bird's bathing as often as possible. So I got asked, why are umbrella cockatoos so intimidating? And I just pick on them a bit. It's more of like an inside joke between the people that know me really, really well. But I personally think that they're intimidating because of their size. You know, they're larger than the average parrot. And because the males, especially, they have black eyes. So you don't necessarily see the eye pinning and stuff that you would more obviously see in a macaw or a different species of parrot. With a cockatoo, that kind of, you miss it. Which is a huge telltale in a lot of parrots. And so to not be able to see that is just like another line of defense that you don't have for predicting behavior. So that, I would say, like their size, the size of the beak, and then their body language, because I feel like they can go from very streamlined to when they're really showing everything and they get as puffed as they can, there's a lot going on there. And if you don't know what you're looking at and you don't know if it's happy or angry, that can be a little scary. So I would say that's why I find them intimidating. Let me know why you guys do or do not find certain species of birds intimidating. I would be really interested to know, because I know that with Amazon parrots, I find them intimidating most when I've talked about them in seminars as being kind of like the police cars or the ambulances of the parrot world. When they show signs, it's like so many signs. It's sirens going off, lights blinking, things flashing, speeding by you. It's a whole bunch of things. So with Amazons, I find it's like a tail fanning, the head feathers going up and poofing, the eye pinning, and it's like usually they're making a noise. So it's just a lot going on, and you're kind of like, whoa, where do I start to analyze this reaction or this behavior? I did get asked if cockatoos are bad for people with asthma. So my husband does have asthma, and yes, the cockatoos are not helping with that at all. He needs to take a Zyrtec anytime that he's going to be around the birds. So those of you with asthma that also have cockatoos, would you please leave your feedback on this in the comments, because I think people learn best, and I appreciate the advice from experience the most. So I would love to hear from you guys. Do you have a cockatoo? Do you have asthma? Or does somebody you know have asthma that's around a cockatoo? Did they have to get rid of the bird? What happened? Because I think it will help people with asthma who maybe connect with cockatoos best make an educated decision. Because oftentimes, if you connect with birds that you possibly can't have, your time may be better spent just volunteering and working with that bird as you can versus having it in your home 24/7. So volunteering your time at a rescue or working in an aviary that maybe has amazing ventilation, it's outdoors, maybe more of your calling, where you can work with them in a safe environment for your breathing, so to speak. Are galahs good as an apartment pet? Now, I would say I haven't met a lot of galahs who have screaming problems. Yes, they have the potential to get loud, and I always think worst case scenario. So if you're living in an apartment, you have a neighbor who absolutely doesn't like animals, doesn't like the noise of any sort of animal, and will get on you anytime your galah starts to celebrate, then it's probably not a good pet for an apartment. And I would say most parrots probably fall under that category because they do have the potential to get noisy. So that's a tough one. I don't think I would recommend most parrots for apartment animals or pets. So that's a tricky one. But I would probably say they are not really great as an apartment pet. Not because they are prone to like conditioned screaming or anything, but just because their normal level of excitement and having fun, which isn't something that you would want to temper down or discourage, because it's a sign of happiness. They have a celebratory scream that they make, and they fly all around, and I just don't see a neighbor really appreciating it. Not that it's long lived, like I don't find it going on forever, but you know, if it happens and your bird's like wrestling with a toy and having a great time, the last thing you're gonna want to have to do is like be in a position to make your bird be quiet when it's enjoying itself and it's not doing anything bad. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the apartment thing. But those of you with cockatoos in apartments, let me know if you disagree, because I find that most of the larger types of cockatoos that can scream way louder and tend to get more conditioned for screaming for attention, so for longer periods of time, would definitely not fall under that apartment pet. But if they don't have those sort of problems and they just use their adorable talking voices, then of course you could probably get away with that. Busted. I do know some people that had umbrella and Moluccan cockatoos that barked like dogs and literally got complaints for their dog. So I think that's pretty hilarious. Another question I got is, do cockatoos swear? So the reason that cockatoos or any type of bird usually swears and then says hello and goodbye, like those are the most common words and phrases that most birds learn, is because birds learn to speak or mimic human speech at a heightened state of emotion. So that means that can be scared as a heightened state, that can be excited, happy at a heightened state. It can pretty much be anything that is qualified as a heightened state of emotion. So usually when somebody enters the room, somebody leaves the room, somebody drops something on their foot and swears, or gets angry and swears, those are going to put your animal at a heightened state of emotion where they're paying more attention and they're more likely to mimic what they hear. So that's why most birds do that. Not all of them do that. Luckily, ours do not do that. I even try to make sure that Capri understands never to yell at the birds, never to say no to them, because I find it really, I would say ugly in a sense. I hope this doesn't offend anyone, but I just find it ugly when a bird yells no at somebody. So I've never wanted my birds to like yell no at me, and I realized that I don't actually say no to them. The worst I've said, because I've heard JINX mimic it, is he'll mimic the sound of COMET and TUSA fighting, doing a little bit like "Rrr, arr," and then me going hey to break it up. So, and I can tell by the tone that he uses of mine that I'm like not happy about it, and I'm like, hey, you know, like break it up sort of thing. But yeah, so keep that in mind when your bird's learning new things. When we wanted to teach Bondi, our Galah, to say hey cutie, it's all we said when we entered the room and left. So when we first got home, we would open the door and be like, hey cutie, and then when we were going, we would say hey cutie and shut the door. It's also how we taught Bandit say night night. So every time we left, we would say night night and and close the door, and those are certain heightened states where they're more likely to pick those things up. Which cockatoo makes the best pet? I got a lot of hate on my last video about cockatoos, and obviously not everybody got my sense of humor with it. I must have not made it more obvious that I was joking on some of this stuff, but I will stand by the fact that I don't think cockatoos do make good pets. And I get that that's gonna offend some people, but I honestly don't think, after my experience with them and seeing a lot of people with cockatoos, Even though there's the exceptions of some really doing well in captivity, I don't think overall that they should be pets. I'm curious to find out what type of cockatoo you guys think make the best pets, because if I focused in on certain people that I follow on Instagram and YouTube, I would say like, oh, that species makes the best pet because that situation is so amazing and thriving. But from my experience, I would say Galahs are the most manageable for the most amount of people. I think people overall that I've seen from my clients have more success with the smaller species of cockatoo, such as the Goffins and the Galah, versus people that I've seen with Moluccans or umbrellas. And I tend to see more Moluccans and umbrellas in rescues and sanctuaries and being rehomed and things such as that. I also feel like I see more of those larger species of cockatoos that have plucked conditions, like they're completely self-mutilated, and in some cases they're actually ripping wounds open and reopening wounds and going beyond just feather plucking. So that would lead me to my answer, but I feel like no matter what I answer on that, you guys are gonna hate me unless I say like every cockatoo is great and ideal, but I just personally don't believe that, and I also don't believe in sugarcoating the truth. You know, early on, when Dave had no experience with parrots, he asked other people, he's like, hey, what should I get? What should I start with? And he was told to rescue an umbrella cockatoo, and it was way beyond him. And although it was okay for a few years, it was just way beyond him, and it wasn't the right advice that was for him. You know, I always am an advocate of like, go be around different species of bird, kind of let the bird choose you sort of thing, but kind of get your ground. See if, do you connect with Amazons? Do you connect with African Greys? Do you connect with Cockatoos? Which one fits into your lifestyle best, and which one is going to thrive in your type of lifestyle? But obviously these were things that we didn't understand back then, and so yeah, he was led down a path that wasn't necessarily for him, that led to another rehome. I think that's why I struggle with people advocating other people to get cockatoos. I just don't think that most people are cut out for it. Now, obviously there's exceptions, and some people find that they are meant for cockatoos, and I think that's awesome, because those people are awesome. Those people are rocking the world. But it's not the majority, I guess is what I'm saying. All right, more questions that I got asked. Male versus female. I feel that females are less hormonal, for one, than male cockatoos. I also feel like they're just easier. Now, that being said, all cockatoos I believe are difficult, but I believe the females are easier, and they are what I would recommend when people come to me and say, you know, I'm gonna get a cockatoo, they're already set on it, should I get male or female? I will almost always likely go towards female. So this is a great question. What is the loudest species of cockatoo? I think anybody wondering about the noise level of a cockatoo should go over to mytus.com, make sure your speakers are on, and enjoy. Go check that out, and then everybody leave your opinion of which one you think is the loudest. And I would say that the Galah scream makes me laugh more so. It's not anything major, and it doesn't hurt my ears or anything unless it's maybe their alarm call, but a Moluccan or an umbrella I feel like would severely make my ears bleed. I feel like that's the type of scream where you just get driven mad. Is more like it. The Goffin scream annoys me, but it's not like I want to go punch something, you know? So I don't know. I feel like you guys are going to do a much better job at naming all the types of species of cockatoo and then describing their screams in different ways, because your comments always crack me up. So I'll leave that for you guys. So this is a cool question. It says, what should a first timer know about Galahs? The funny thing is about Galahs is that I've had clients come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I thought my Galah was dying. He was hanging upside down, like wrapped around this toy, and then I realized he was playing. And Galahs are just crazy. They're hilarious. They're crazy. Sometimes their behavior makes absolutely no sense. Sometimes they act like things are terrifying, and then 2 seconds later, it's the coolest thing in the world. They are a lot of fun, and things that you might think are wrong with your Galah are actually just how Galahs are. So it's really funny. We had a client recently who's hand feeding, and her galah, literally, this is an inside joke between Dave and I, which is now going to be out there, but so we hand fed Bandit and Bondi, and Bandit was the most annoying baby galah in the world. We would be like making the formula and stuff, and every baby bird is so anticipating their baby food. They are so excited for it, and he would puff up and like go back and forth and just go "Wah!" but like 10 times louder and like more gurgly and all this crazy stuff, and he would just be like "Wah!" Well, anytime Dave and I feel like we're really hungry, like the other person took too long or we want to go eat, we'll just enter the room like "Wah!" to let each other know that we're hungry, because it's just this funny thing. And Bandit would continue to make the noise while hand feeding, and then even after, with this bulging crop that's like super full, he would just like be on a stand and be like "Wah!" and we were just like, oh my gosh, like make it stop. But it was like you're laughing about making it stop, you know, and now the sound is endearing to me. So whenever we FaceTime with this free flight student, I just grin ear to ear hearing that sound, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I miss those days. And right now she's going nuts being like, make it stop. So there's a lot of things to know about galahs. I would say if you're getting one young, definitely ask your breeder what to be wary about. Are cockatoos good for free flight? So I would say that we've had and seen a lot of success with galahs for free flight. I have not seen a lot of success for white cockatoos in general for free flight. However, there are some successful flyers out there. We have a free flight student named Kai who had a Moluccan cockatoo. It took 9 months to train those two for free flight. And, I feel like free flight is is less based on species as much as it is a bird by bird basis. Some birds just want it more. Some birds are content just hanging out outside with their owners, but don't necessarily want to fly for fun. I've just kind of seen all across the board. So I think it's less cockatoos are good or bad for free flight as it is what's the situation with this particular bird. And I talk about it a lot, but with all of our free flight students, we haven't trained any single one of them the same, because each person is different, each bird is different. So obviously birds in the wild, they're all meant to fly and be good at it. So ideally, all species would be great for it. However, I do believe, just from personal experience of teaching people and coaching people through free flight, that the cockatoos are the hardest. And the reason why is because finding out what motivates them to fly is harder, because it's usually, like I said before, it can be attention-based or praise and excitement-based, which are harder things to use than treats. So a lot of the times cockatoos get spoiled with people food, which can really mess up the diet and then mess up how you can use treats or not to your ability for training. So I would say overall, we don't usually recommend cockatoos for free flight unless it's a galah. It's definitely possible. So this question, I'm sure you guys already know the answer to. I got asked galah versus umbrella, and for me personally, it would be a galah, obviously because I have two, so I really like galahs. But if you guys are leaving comments, tell me if it's up to you and you had to have a cockatoo. Somebody was gonna make you have a cockatoo for whatever reason, and you only got to choose whether or not it was a galah or an umbrella cockatoo. Which one would you choose? And I would love to see how this tallies up in the end. So the last question I have is basically asking for my bite stories from my cockatoos, or I guess anybody's cockatoos, but I haven't actually been bit by, ooh, knock on wood, anybody else's cockatoo. So I've only been bit by my own, and it was really interesting. Somebody asked me the other day, or somebody made a comment the other day just saying like, whoa, you get bit too? And I was just like, what? Yes, I'm aware of more training aspects and things like that, but you guys, we mess up all the time, Dave and I. There's plenty of times where we're just in a mood and we don't see things, or we're too close to something and we don't see the bigger picture. We do get bit, we do get warned. Sometimes you're in a hurry to do something. Sometimes you're just not paying attention, or whatever it is. Yes, we get bit. We definitely don't try to get bit, but it happens. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to get this right 100% of the time, especially with a cockatoo. You know, that's how people learn. We all started somewhere. So just remember that, like, nobody is perfect. And just because, you know, sometimes I feel like people are like, oh, show your mistakes, show that you're human, which I feel like I do, but maybe I don't do it enough. And then I feel like when I do show it sometimes, then I'm completely I don't even know the right word for it, but then people are like, oh, we shouldn't be taking advice from you. You're not perfect. And it's kind of like, what the heck? Can't win. Bite stories. I will share a bite story with you. This is probably my worst one, hurt my feelings the most, and was really early on when I was about 19 years old. And I didn't have that much experience with parrots at that time. So we had Bondi, our rose-breasted cockatoo, and we were doing a show with her. Now, Bondi, because of permitting and stuff with our birds and how we travel with them, we couldn't get her permit in time. So we actually went on a cruise ship for a few months without her, and she stayed with my mother, who helped raise her and taught her a lot of the tricks that she knows today. So my mom formed a really special relationship with Bondi, and Bondi absolutely adores her. We moved to an island in the South Pacific called Saipan for 13.5 months, and my parents came out to visit us. And Bondi was doing the show, and so I thought maybe she should hang out with my mom ahead of time so that she wouldn't feel compelled to spot her in the audience, then go fly to her and ignore the rest of the show. So my mom was backstage hanging out with her for a while, and it came time that I needed to get her ready from the show. So I went to take her back, and she didn't want to come back to me. She just wanted to hang out with my mom. And I wasn't really sure how to get her to come back, but eventually she came back. She didn't want to. She was super resistant, but she stepped up for me. And to reward her and kind of say sorry, I leaned in to give her a kiss. Well, it's a really bad amateur move because she was upset with me. She didn't want to come to me. I should have recognized it all, but I didn't. And she bit me on my lip. And I was so hurt. My feelings were just like crushed into a million pieces. And when I described it to Dave on what happened, because he obviously saw me bleeding from the lip, he was just like, you know, Jamie, she didn't want to come back to you. Like he's always trying to make me understand the situation so that I can avoid it in the future. But I just kind of felt worse because I thought it should have been more obvious to me. And face bites are the worst, and they're probably the most embarrassing and the type of bite that I think about the most when I go in and put my face close to my birds. I just think of like, what if this just totally went wrong? What if a dog barked and freaked my bird out and he grabbed my face? Or, you know, I think about that stuff a little bit more so now, and I felt really silly that I even leaned in for a kiss after taking her away from the person that she wanted to be with the most at the time. So that bite really hurt my feelings, but it also stays with me in a way that I tend to think about things a little bit more so. I also try, which I'm not always successful at, I try to disconnect and not allow myself to get hurt feelings when I get bit, but I will say I'm pretty bad about that too. It's one thing to know that you shouldn't take things personally. It's another thing to actually not take things personally. And from animals, it hurts my feelings. I just feel like a major screw up when I get bit. So it affects me on a pretty deep level. And, you know, I understand that I'm human and sometimes my expectations are too high for myself. So it's something that I'm constantly working on. But, you know, the things that I share here on my channel and with all of you, I know because I've gone through it and messed up, and it's from personal experience. So that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from sitting on a pedestal and saying like, haha, I know more than you. It's like, oh yeah, been there, done that. It wasn't pleasant. This is what I learned. So hopefully you guys can all take that mentality with each other and help each other out, because that's what I feel like this community needs more of. It needs more sharing, helping, sharing experiences, real, truthful experiences, and less judgment. So hopefully you guys learned a thing or two about cockatoos, And thank you for your honest feedback of saying like, hey, do some videos without birds so you're not distracted and you can actually make it through a full sentence. I've always felt pressured to keep birds in my videos because I feel like that's why people watch, is for the cute little birds. But I also understand that you guys truly want the information, and knowing that has helped me be able to provide better for you guys. So I know I get distracted with the birds in my video. I can often get carried away with emotions and excitement about certain things that happen with my birds. So thank you for your honest and open feedback always. I really appreciate it, and it helps shape the information that I give to you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and I don't get too much hate for basically saying that cockatoos don't really make the best pets. One last thing, guys, remember that these cockatoos can live between 50 to 70 years, sometimes upwards of that, sometimes less than that. It really depends on their situation, but you're looking at a lifelong companion. So please keep that in mind when you consider adopting or buying a pet cockatoo.